Welcome to Nature Talk, where you get an eminent new guest in each episode. Today I am going to interact with the famous arachnologist and evolutionary biologist, the senior curator of Denver Museum of Nature and Science. So please welcome Dr. Paula Cushing. Welcome to Nature Talk, ma'am. So first of all, how do you feel about this talk show?
Hello, Dr. Sandeep Paul. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak on your wonderful new YouTube show, Nature Talk. It's very nice to be with you today. My name is Dr. Paula Cushing. I am a curator, a museum curator at a natural history museum in Denver, Colorado in the United States. And I'm very pleased to be part of your Nature Talk video series. It's a great new series, and I applaud you and for starting this nature show. I think your episodes have been a lot of fun to watch and very informative. It's nice to see a new YouTube series that is focused on the importance of natural history and the animals and plants in the natural world. So well done. Very nice job.
Where most of the people like me are afraid of arachnids. What made you to fall in love with them?
As your listeners know, I am an arachnologist. My research is focused on studying spiders and their relatives, arachnids. And I know many people in the world have a little bit of a fear about arachnids, although I think that fear is largely pretty irrational. These are very, very interesting animals. I began studying arachnids when I was in college. And when I'll back up, because I became interested in doing research in natural history and evolution when I was a kid, when I was a child. I was very fascinated with the idea that we live on this wonderful planet that is filled with different living organisms, plants and animals and different species. And I was so intrigued with that whole idea that we have one planet in the solar system, maybe only a single planet, the Earth, and the whole universe that has life on it. And so even as a child, I wanted to know why that was. I just wanted to study nature because I was so fascinated with that. And I remember when I was a little kid, when I was a small child, I asked one of my older sisters or brothers if there was a name for a person who wanted to study nature. And they said, yes, the person who wants to study nature is called a naturalist. So I thought, well, that's what I want to do. And so when I got older and went to high school, I took all sorts of biology classes, and I knew that I wanted to do research. I really was interested in doing research as a profession. And I was more interested in animals than in plants. And I knew that there were a lot of arthropods, organisms with jointed legs and exoskeletons, things like insects and arachnids and millipedes and centipedes. There were many, many, many species of those arthropods on Earth. And yet there were fewer people studying those many, many hundreds of thousands of species of arthropods than there were scientists studying vertebrates, things like mammals and birds and reptiles. So I thought, well, if I want to do research, I bet I could contribute more if I study arthropods, if I study these invertebrate organisms. So I started to become very, very interested in arthropods and insects, spiders, those kinds of animals. And when I went to college in Virginia, in the eastern part of the United States. And I started to do volunteer work in the laboratory of a professor at my university. And that professor in the biology department happened to be an arachnologist. He studied spiders. And so I became very involved at that point with looking at spiders, studying spiders, doing research on them. And I liked the field, I liked the animals. I thought that they were very, very interesting, and there were a lot of very interesting questions that still had to be answered about the biology of arachnids, of spiders and their relatives. So I decided to just stay with that field. I have never been afraid of arachnids, of spiders. I don't really understand why so many people are, because they really, for the most part, are not dangerous to humans. There are over 48,000 described species of spiders on Earth, and yet there are just a very few number of those species, maybe 100 worldwide, that have venom that is harmful to humans. So the vast majority of species of spiders are really harmless to humans. There are some species of scorpions that have venom that is harmful to humans, but there are only a few of those as well. So really the vast majority of arachnids are not harmful to humans at all. They did not evolve to hunt us. They evolved to hunt insects. And so they can kill insects, but they really, for the most part, most species cannot harm humans. So I think one reason why so many people might be afraid of spiders and some other arachnids is because they are so different from human beings. Humans are vertebrates. Our skeleton is on the inside of our body, whereas these animals, they have lots of legs, they have lots of eyes, they have exoskeletons. They're just very different organisms from what we think about, from what humans are used to. And so I think because they are so foreign, so different, that may be one reason why some people are somewhat afraid of spiders and afraid of arachnids. But there really are very few species of arachnids on Earth that we need to be worried about at all, or that would be harmful to humans.
From your profile, I know you came to India for research purpose. If you kindly share your experience here in India.
In 2002, I was invited to your wonderful country by a professor of biology at Mangalore University, Dr. Rajashekar Patel. And Dr. Patel sent word out to the arachnology community asking if there was a scientist who might be willing to come and visit and work with some of his students who were doing different projects with spiders in India. And so I had never been to India. I had always been interested in traveling there. So I decided I would take him up on his offer. And so I worked for about several weeks at Mangalore University with his students, identifying some specimens that he was working on and collecting. And I also did some guest lectures at Mangalore University, and I also traveled to University of Mysore and did some lecture there. And I also worked with students and did a lecture at the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. So I was in India, I think, for about 5 weeks or so in 2002, and I traveled in southern India. I didn't do a lot of my own research at all. I was mostly a visiting scholar, working with students there and doing some guest lectures at those universities. But it was a wonderful experience, and I so enjoyed getting to see at least a small part of India. I only traveled in those 3 states, but I at least got to see some of the incredible environments, as well as the incredible tourist areas and the temples, and of course to meet the Indian people and some of the people of your country was truly a pleasure. I really enjoyed that trip, and it was one of the highlights of the many places that I've traveled in the world.
Briefly tell students and viewers about your current research focus, that is camel spider.
So one of the groups of arachnids that I am doing a lot of research on right now, myself and my students, is a group in the order Solifugae, or camel spiders. And I'm going to share my screen so I can show you a little bit, give you an overview of some of the research that I'm doing on this group. So let's see if I can do this. So these animals that I'm studying, you can see them here on the screen, and they are in the kingdom Animalia, the phylum Arthropoda, the class Arachnida, and they are in the order Solifuges. So in that class Arachnida, there are 12 different orders of arachnids, and Solifugae, or the camel spiders, are one of those orders. And they are really interesting arachnids. We don't know very much about them, but let me see if I can show you. So this is a picture of one of these camel spiders. Camel spiders is one of the common names. It's a little bit of a misnomer. It's a misleading, because this animal is not a spider. It's in the class Arachnida, but it is a non-spider arachnid. But like spiders, they have two major body parts. They have a cephalothorax and an abdomen. They have they have 1, 2, 3, 4 pairs of walking legs, or 8 walking legs, and they have these leg-like front appendages called pedipalps. They have very large, very powerful jaws that they use to tear apart their insect prey. So in my lab, and these animals, these camel spiders, are found in primarily in desert or semi-desert, very dry xeric environments throughout the world, except in certain parts of the old Gondwana land. So they're not found in Australia, but not found in New Zealand, but they are found in many different desert or dry environments throughout the world, including in India. And you can see these are the kinds of typical habitats where these camel spiders are found. They're known by many, many different common names: wind scorpions, camel spiders, children of the earth, Madre de Alacran in Mexico, meaning mother of scorpion, skidiers in some parts of Africa, which means hair cutters, because they think that they come into your bed at night and cut your hair with their giant jaws. Spinacopa in some parts of the world, which means chasing spiders, because they run and they run and they run. They run very fast and for very long. So chasing spiders is referencing their habit to run like the wind. So lots of different common names for these animals. There are 12 different families in the order Solifugae, and the family that my lab is studying is a North American family, the family Myrmecophilic. But in India, you have 4 different families. You can find species in the family Daicidae. You can find species in the family Galeotidae, right here in India. You can also find, 3 different families, and you also have species in the family Rhagotidae in India. But in my lab, we're focusing on just the species in the family Myrmecophilic. There are total about over 1,000 species of Solifugae throughout the world. In North America, there are a couple of hundred species in 2 different families. But like I said, my lab is focused primarily on species in the family Myrmecophilic. And I'm working with colleagues, different colleagues on this research. It's funded by the National Science Foundation. And 2 of my students are on either end. So this is my PhD student, Erica Garcia, and on the right is Ryan Jones, who's my master's student. And we're working with Jack Brookhart, he's my research associate at the museum. He's one of the world experts on solifuges. And Matt Graham, shown standing behind me, is my co-principal investigator on this project. And also working with us is Warren Savory and some other students. And what we're doing in our research is we're trying to understand the phylogeny, the systematics or phylogeny, the evolutionary relationships between and among different species of camel spiders in the family Myrmecophilic using next generation sequencing, which is what this ultra conserved elements is. And then use that phylogeny to revise the taxonomy of the family Myrmecophilic. And we're also interested in looking at the behaviors of the animals and of the morphology and why they have different morphological or anatomical features. And then my colleague Matt Graham is looking at how we might be able to use camel spiders as a way to better understand how deserts evolved. So the evolution of desert environments and the animals that live in those desert ecosystems. So we're doing field work throughout North America and throughout Mexico, collecting species of Solifugae found in these different regions within North America. And we use different techniques to find them. So we use pitfall trapping, where we put containers with preservative and we sink them in the ground. And then we use these fencing, these segments of fencing, that the animals will hit the fencing and run along them and topple into our pitfall traps. We also use light trapping, because these nocturnal predators are attracted to lights at night. And what we think is that they're attracted to the insects that are themselves attracted to lights. So we set lights up in the desert. The Solifugae come to hunt around the lights, and we can then catch the camel spiders around the lights. And like I said, we're also looking at the morphology. They have giant jaws, and they have interesting eyes, and they have different morphological features, particularly to do with their jaws. And so we're trying to understand better different aspects of their morphology or their anatomy. And we're also looking at their development, how they go from, they hatch out of eggs and develop into very immobile larval stages, and then they molt into more mobile juvenile stages that can hunt, and then go through several different developmental stages until they become adults. So we're trying to better understand that whole process and trying to better understand their behavior. This is a male that is in the process of copulating with a female. The males in these camel spiders, they transfer the sperm packet to the female using their jaws. So there's a lot of specialized aspects of the jaws of the chelicerae of the camel spider that has to do with this transfer of sperm into the females. So we're trying to understand that better. And hopefully in the course of this project, we'll publish many different scientific articles that will elucidate and help us as scientists to better understand these particular arachnids, which their biology is not very well known. So I'm hoping that our research program will help us elucidate and shed some light on the natural history and the behavior and the morphology and the evolution of this group of arachnids. So let me stop sharing the screen. And so at least that's given you a little bit of information about the kind of research that my lab is doing.
Do they form waves? Are they poisonous?
Dr. Sandeep Pal did a really nice video about this group of arachnids as part of his Professor Strange episode 1, where he answered some questions about the biology of camel spiders of Solifugae. And so if you watch that episode, he's covered a lot of the questions that I often get about these arachnids, but I'll cover the answers here as well. I oftentimes get asked whether these particular arachnids, Solifugae, are dangerous, and they're not. The larger species might be able to give you a bit of a nip, pinch your finger, or if you grab it, but they do not have venom glands, so they really are not at all dangerous to humans. They are very aggressive, so they might try to give you a nip if you grab one and try to hold it and try to bite you with their chelicerae, but they really can't do any harm. They do not have spinnerets or silk glands. So unlike spiders, camel spiders cannot produce webs. They are just actively mobile running predators. They run down their prey, they grab their prey using their front legs and using their chelicerae and their pedipalps. They bring that insect prey close to their mouth parts, and then they kill the insects using the jaws, using the chelicerae, which are very mobile. So the chelicerae can move up and down and back and forth and can tear that insect prey apart. Then, like other arachnids, they regurgitate digestive enzymes onto the body of the insect prey. The digestive enzymes break down the tissue, and then the solifugae, or the camel spider, just sucks up that pre-liquefied, pre-digested meal. So they're not dangerous. They do not have silk. They can't produce webs. They have no venom. They're harmless unless you're an insect.
Corona pandemic, is it a curse to human being or blessings to nature?
Viewers have probably noticed that I'm filming in my home, and I'm filming this in my home because of the coronavirus pandemic. So it's an interesting time for all of us to be alive, because this pandemic is affecting the entire world. And Dr. Sandeep Paul sent me a request to answer a question about this current interesting time that we're living in, whether or not I think that the coronavirus and this coronavirus pandemic is a blessing or a curse on the planet. And we're going to have to wait and see how the world emerges from this challenging time. I think it's going to be very interesting to see how we recover from this pandemic. I think one of the things about the time that we're living in is that this is affecting the entire world, all countries on the world, all human populations, wherever you live, are being affected by this virus. And so we are in this together. And oftentimes each country is doing things alone for the good of their country and maybe for the bad of other countries, but we're all being challenged. Every human being on the planet is being challenged by this pandemic. And so to me, there's an opportunity for us to work together as a global population to try to help each other recover from this. Whether or not we're going to show that level of cooperation in the process of recovering is going to be interesting to see. Whether we as a human population and as a species have the wherewithal and the wisdom to try to find solutions to this pandemic together, rather than as individual communities and individual countries. And I don't know what's going to happen. I'm hoping that as we emerge from this global challenge, we will find that we will find ways to work together better than we did before. We will find ways to appreciate our communities more than perhaps we did before, and to appreciate our families more than perhaps we did before, because it makes us value being together with other human beings and working together with other human beings towards a common goal. So that's my hope, is that as we emerge from this pandemic, that we as a human species, as one of the species on Earth, will emerge stronger than we were before, more cooperative as a species than we were before. But we're just going to have to wait and see. And to a certain extent, that's going to depend on the wisdom of our leaders in each of our countries, the direction that we as a species will go when this is all done.
Finally, your message to zoology students.
The message that I would like to leave with your students, your zoology students and others who might be watching this video, is that if you're interested in nature, if you're interested in biology, if you're interested in zoology, if you're interested in the natural world, then the most important thing is to be curious. It's helpful if you can do well in school. It's helpful to get good grades in school. It's helpful to do well on tests. But what is most critical if you want to study nature and to be a biologist or to be active in science is to maintain a level of curiosity. We have this extraordinary planet that we work on. We are surrounded by plants and animals and organisms that we know very little about. We need more people who are interested in science to study life on Earth, be it living organisms that are living now, be it paleontologists who study past life on Earth, be it other scientists who are trying to understand the universe and how this planet evolved. We need more people who want to go into science, want to study science. And the most critical thing that is critical for all people who are interested in making science a career is curiosity. Not good grades, not being a stellar student, but being a curious human being. That is absolutely critical, and you cannot succeed in science without maintaining that level of curiosity and being willing to explore questions as they arise and see where it leads, see where it takes you. So I've enjoyed being part of this video series, and I hope you have enjoyed learning at least a little bit about what I do as a scientist. So thank you very much, and I wish you well.
So thank you so much for being here in Nature Talk. So you have just seen Dr. Paula Cushing sharing her research experience, her visit to India, and lots of information about camel spider. She also liked and gave her positive feedback on first episode of Professor Strange on camel spider. If you have any queries or doubts, you may leave your comment below. If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment and share. So see you all in the next episode of Nature Talk with another new guest.